Hey everyone, it's Nicole and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to film one of my end of the year videos. It's the worst books of 2020, baby. In my case, it's the most disappointing books of 2020 because I tend to not talk about books that had flaws, but they were not criminal, fatal flaws. I usually pick the books for these videos that I've had expectations for and that were disappointing to me. So with that in mind, we have 9 books to talk about and I propose we just get on with it. The first book that I want to talk about, I can't believe that I've read it in 2020. 2020 was such a long year. A Lesson in Thorns by Simone. I think I read it for the first 𝔻𝕻𝕻𝕸𝕃 of 2020 and I've had huge expectations for it. I think people hyped it up too much. I love erotica mixed with other genres. There has to be something substantial for me to like these types of books. For example, I love an erotica with a really good thriller elements. I love an erotica with some fantasy elements. Why not? This one didn't deliver on the mystery, at least not in the first half of the book, and also I don't really think that it delivered in terms of relationships and character development. Essentially what I'm trying to say, this novel looks really good on paper. It has a very interesting, intriguing synopsis. The concept of these characters and their relationships is very intriguing, but when it comes to execution, it lacks realism to properly word it. It felt very much like we were supposed to believe that these characters had such an intense attachment to each other, but the story doesn't have much argument for that. It's about these 6 characters that were very close when they were children because their families were close. Every summer their families met in this mysterious estate and the kids did whatever they wanted, just walked around the premises and got into a lot of different shenanigans. One day they went way too far into the land and found an abandoned church and decided to pretend that they are attending a wedding. 2 of them were chosen to get married, the main protagonist named Pooh, and this other guy, I don't even remember his name, I think it was Eden or something. At the end they decide to kiss because it's a part of the wedding ceremony, but one of the other guys just jumps between them and they share a 3-way kiss, basically. This situation is marked by something mysterious, some kind of an outer force, and they all feel it. But years later, their lives got separated, and at the start of the novel, Eden, let's call him Eden because I don't remember his name, calls Pooh back to his estate that he now inherited to help him with his library because she's a librarian. And immediately they feel this undeniable attraction. This novel was pitched very interestingly. It was supposed to be a polyamorous secret society story about some ritualistic sex practices. And all the elements are in here. You get your threesomes and sixsomes, and I gotta say that a lot of scenes of sexual nature were pretty hot, but not as wild as people made me believe. But that's not the main issue actually. The problem that I've had with it is that the attraction and attachment these characters felt towards each other was built in a very impatient way. For example, the first and main relationship that develops in this book, develops is a really big word for it because it doesn't really develop, is very rushed. The moment that she sees him for the first time in forever, she just gets turned on. And I don't believe that it's actually a thing that happens in real life. It just doesn't happen. Don't tell me it happens, I will lose my faith in humanity. So it doesn't really take much to turn her on. He basically looks at her sometimes or touches her hand and she's wet. And I feel like it is an unrealistic standard. There's also very little to their relationship except for sexual attraction that isn't realistic, as I've said previously, so I didn't really see the appeal. I only got into the characters and their relationships in the end of the story because I managed to forget the first half and that their relationships and their characters were developed so awkwardly. I'm very sad about it too because the writing style and the concept are pretty good. And I feel like if it would have been a bit longer and delved into the relationships between characters one at a time, it would have been more substantial. So today's book is One Last Dance by Anna Stone. I didn't have much expectation for it. I've read one other Anna Stone book and didn't really like it. I gave it 3 stars, it was kind of meh. And this one was also kind of meh, which is significant this time because I decided that I'm done with Anna Stone books. They're just not for me. In my opinion, her books are often underdeveloped in terms of characters, and also I never see the appeal of the love interest and what one of the characters gains from a relationship with the second character. This was about a ballet teacher and her ex-student. They meet again years after they stopped interacting, and the sparks fly again because the student had a fat crush on her teacher and now she actually has a chance. This one was very flat in my opinion. Usually when it comes to romances, the relationship should have some kind of obstacle, and I didn't see it in this book, especially in the present. The past was a bit better because it was kind of forbidden, even though the student was 18. And the teacher didn't really have many feelings for her, so I also do not appreciate the way Anna Stone writes smutty scenes. They are not especially thrilling, even though she tries to give some kind of diversity in terms of what people do. I don't know what exactly is missing for them, but I'm also notoriously hard to please when it comes to smutty scenes, because there has to be a specific chemistry, a specific something for me to like it. So from now on, I'm not going to pick Anna Stone books unless I hear something about a really cool book with a very cool premise, but the books that I read from her disappointed me. The next one is The Gravity of Us by Phil Stamper. I actually gave this book 3 stars, but it ended up on my most disappointing books because the way people hyped it up was unreal. Well, in my corner of the internet. This one is about a teenager who is a wannabe reporter. He is invited to work for BuzzFeed, a kind of company, to cover the new space program, but his father is a space pilot and he is actually invited into the program. So instead of accepting the job, this guy has to move with his family to this small town. There's also a specific place where all these space people live. They also have a reality TV show. So they basically ask the guy to stop reporting, and he is pissed off about it. It is about private and public, how fame and reality TV works. He also falls for the son of another pilot, and that's that, I guess. The problem with this book for me was that there was a lack of conflict. There's a little drama in terms of reality TV portion, but it also isn't very engaging. I wasn't really impressed with it. It wasn't a contemporary young adult romance. It also wasn't an issue book, so I didn't really get where this book wants to stand. The next book is When We Were Magic by Sarah Gailey. I believe it was on my most anticipated reads of 2020, or perhaps it was in my brain, because I really wanted to check out a lot of Sarah Gailey's work, and they are pretty prolific in terms of genres. They write young adult and adult, and a lot of it is about witches. My beef with it is pretty simple. I don't think this specific book was marketed correctly. It was not supposed to be a young adult novel. The pacing and writing style are wrong for this category. It was much more like a literary fiction novel, which definitely didn't make me more excited. Going into novels about witches, I expect more of an urban fantasy feel. This is about a group of witches that are a part of the same circle and are friends. They go to prom or some kind of party, and one of them hooks up with a guy and accidentally kills him with her powers. They decide to cover it up and bury the body, and this whole book is about them doing that. Once again, on paper sounds very fun and exciting, but in terms of execution, it's very slow. It's more about them grieving their decision and grieving the life of this guy, and I couldn't care less about this guy because I literally seen him for a second. Some characters and friendships got more of a spotlight in this novel, so I didn't care about half of the cast of characters either, and also it just felt like a concept that the author got but didn't really know how to put on paper in an exciting way. But perhaps I'm just biased because I'm not a fan of these types of novels. The next book was part of an experiment. I didn't like a lot of books from that video. It was me reading my mom's historical romances because I found her box of romances and decided to try them because I know that I've read them before when I was a teenager, but I forgot a lot of it. For that experiment, I picked 5 books from the box and gave them a try. The most outrageous one, in my opinion, was Calypso Magic by Coulter. It is absolutely disgusting. It made me feel all kinds of terrible, even though it started very promising. It's about a young woman that comes from West Indies, I believe. back to London to her very watered-down relatives so they could help her participate in a season and find a husband. She doesn't really find anyone, and the grand aunt that takes her in actually wants to set her up with her nephew, and they don't really get along, but a lot of romances started this way. They do have a lot of chemistry though, so eventually attraction crops up. The problem with this book is that it's incredibly rapey. And while I read a lot of books in that video that had quite questionable consent, this one was especially outrageous because the person that rapes the female character is the love interest. It was something so disgusting and unforgivable, and it was swiped under the carpet at the end of the story. It's an older historical romance, and I know that it was quite a trend back in the day because women were not allowed to outwardly show that they are interested sexually in someone, so that was kind of a cop-out. But it was so bad and sickening. I highly recommend to avoid it if you can. The next book was also my most anticipated reads of 2020. It was We Used to Be Friends by Amy Spalding. It is the book that was pitched as a friendship breakup story, and we know that friendship breakups are always much more intense than relationship breakups. So I was pretty excited. Also, I love one of Amy Spalding's other books. It was absolutely delightful and funny, had a very interesting conflict, but this one I just didn't care about. The writing felt also different, and I wasn't interested in either of the point of views, so it was a pretty boring read for me. I just wish she had written another funny contemporary romance because I think she does well with them, and I was really looking forward for something similar. The next order is simultaneously on my most disappointing books of 2020 list and my favorite books of 2020 list. It's Rebekah Weatherspoon, in this case with At Her Feet. At Her Feet is just a very weird book for me. It's about a mommy-little girl relationship, which is something I was educated on through this book because I didn't know this kind of dynamics exist. And I'm not going to lie, not only it was not appealing at all, I kind of have very squeaky feelings about it too. While it's two adults engaging in something consensually, it still feels oddly suspicious. A lot of things that these two women done to each other in this novel made my skin crawl. I didn't really get it. At times it was very funny to me. So I guess it's just not for me, it's for people that engage in this fetish and like it. Rebekah Weatherspoon is still a very good author. The way she writes her characters and dynamics between them is always engaging. It's always believable. That's what I really like about her writing style. The next one is a huge disappointment for me because I expected so much from this book and I DNF'd it halfway. It is Something to Talk About by Meryl Wilsner. I wanted this book to be so good. I wanted it to be the next Red, White and Royal Blue, and it's a hard thing to achieve for an FF romance. I do have this hope for another book that I've read this year that is stellar in my opinion, but it's still a bit underhyped. So Something to Talk About was supposed to be an FF romance between a famous movie producer and her personal assistant. First of all, I love these types of scenarios. Obviously, they're much more problematic in real life, but it's fiction. I feel like the concept opens up for a lot of tension, a lot of interesting scenarios and situations. In this story, they went to the red carpet together, were photographed close, whispering to each other, and the papers started spreading rumors that they are dating. Later in the book, we realize that both of them have feelings for each other, but they keep it under control because they're not sure if the other woman likes them back. This was such a fun concept, even though it's a little bit unrealistic because no one is going to spread rumors about lesbians. They'd rather call them gal pals and just run with it instead. But the way it was executed just didn't jive with me, and I know that a lot of people said the same thing. It lacked a lot of chemistry. The relationship wasn't set up as a romantic relationship, and it was very slow. I didn't really get to the point where I felt that this could actually turn into something. The chemistry is very important in a romance novel. The tension is very important in a romance novel, and it lacked that, which obviously is the main problem. I'm very bitter about it. I feel like I was robbed out of a story that I really anticipated. So even though it was a DNF, I still put it in this video. The last book that I didn't have as many expectations, I just built them up when I decided to ask for the arc from the publisher. It's The Ravens by Cass Morgan and Danielle Paige. Cass Morgan is the author of the 100, and this one is her latest release, co-authored with another author. This one was supposed to be about a coven of witches that are in the same sorority. The concept was very intriguing to me. I loved the idea, but this was executed in a very juvenile way. These characters went to college and they acted like they were 13. They were a lot of cliques. In general, this book read like a Gossip Girl era books, which of course was not especially thrilling for me. I didn't really like it, and I think I gave it 2 stars. These are all the books that I really wanted to talk about in this video. I've had other books that I've given 2 and 1 star this year, but I've had 0 expectations for them. I just decided to try them and they weren't offensive to my palate. These ones though, I was pretty disappointed in. In the comments down below, tell me about the books that you were disappointed in 2020, or perhaps some of the books on my list were your favorites. I would actually really like to read your point of view on them. If you reach this part of the video and you don't really have much to say but want to indicate that you watched it till the end, just leave an emoji of the lady that does this. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you soon with another one, but until then, bye!